Welcome to Miami's community newspapers. I am Robert Asencio. But let me ask you, the audience, who will our next governor be? Will it be Ron DeSantis or will it be one of the three Democrat candidates running for office? Today, we have an honor that we're here sitting down to speak with Florida's Commissioner of Agriculture, Nikki Fried, who is currently running for governor of the state of Florida in 2022. Welcome, Commissioner. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's so good to be on the show with you. And it's so good to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in so long.
It's been a few years
It
since
has.
the last campaign. So, Commissioner, let's jump right into it because I know that the audience wants to hear, well, about you and your run, right? But let's talk about, your position as Commissioner of Agriculture. It's an incredible position that has a lot of services for the state of Florida, which people really don't understand or know much about the commission. Why don't you tell us about your role as a commissioner, and then let's go into the qualifications for governor.
Absolutely. It's funny when I was running for commissioner. Everybody kept saying, "What was a girl from Miami doing running for commissioner of agriculture?" And so I really spent a lot of time during the campaign and as well, even the last 3 years, trying to explain to people how enormous the portfolio is underneath the commissioner. So not only obviously we do agriculture, which is the second largest economic driver for our state. It's about $380 billion economic impact. 2 million people work inside of agriculture. So outside of agriculture is agriculture and consumer services. So I oversee 19 divisions, everything from regulations of our fares and the rides to obviously the gas pumps and making sure that people aren't being scammed at the gas stations, to concealed weapons permitting, our food nutrition programs, so making sure that we're coordinating with our food banks, coordinating with all of our school nutrition professionals, making sure that we are overseeing fraud that's happening, not just the gas station, but other consumer issues. We regulate travel agents and nonprofit organizations. We also do the concealed weapons programming, our Office of Energy, and the creation of our hemp program back in 2019. So we oversee the hemp program in our state. So tremendous portfolio. We've got 4,600 employees across the state, which is almost, it's not as large as the governor's office, but certainly it is a very extensive office with about a $1.3 billion agency.
Wow, they're rather sizable. So tell me about you. Tell the audience about you. Who are you? Who is Nikki Fried? Who is the woman behind the screen?
or the girl on the gas station. I'm considered the girl on the gas station pump, So born and raised in Miami, as were my parents. My parents were actually high school sweethearts. They grew up in Westchester, so they went to Carl Park. And so I went to Palmetto Middle, Palmetto High School. I was doing Habitat for Humanity and soup kitchens at Camilla's house on the weekends growing up, doing different types of civil rights parades growing up. Then I went to the University of Florida. So for all my Gators out there, go Gators. I know. My dad actually went to FSU. So I actually grew up when all my friends were doing this in Miami. I was going like this, but no, now I go like this. But I went to UF where I was involved. I went to my undergrad, my master's, my law degree, was student body president my last year, where I was the first female in an 18-year span. So broke a lot of glass ceilings and really saw how important it was to really represent all the people on a campus, which the diversity of the University of Florida campus is significant. Then I graduated and moved first to Jacksonville, where I was doing corporate litigation and hated every single moment of it. And loved Jacksonville, but I moved back to Gainesville, where I was at the public defender's office, where I really saw, the two systems of our justice system and saw the injustice so many times in representing my clients. Then my dad called me and said, "Listen, Nick, we've got a problem. We are seeing that the banks took really advantage of people. Come home and fight with me." And so I came back home to South Florida, where it was in the middle of our foreclosure crisis, and was in the Tri-County courthouse every single day fighting for the people that were sold this bill of goods that was not correct. They said this American dream of home ownership, and then the banks took it away from people. So we were in court every single day. And about 8 years after kind of practicing traditional law, I said, I really want to be involved in changing public policy, and scrubbed my resume and went up to Tallahassee and was representing an organization that was fighting for foster care kids and Broward school boards for public education, and then the expansion of medical marijuana here in our state, which I think is what most people know me for at this point. And then in 2018, I got frustrated. I got frustrated with the nepotism of Tallahassee, the corruption, the fact that if you are working on some good legislation, but you're not backed by corporate, your bills don't go anywhere. And I got angry. And so in 2018, I said, time to stop, complaining about it, time to raise your hand and be willing to kind of make a change. And I've been taught from a very early age that when you see injustice in society, you're supposed to stand up against it. And that is who I am to the core. Every single day that I wake up fighting for the people of our state is because of the things that I was instilled in me from a very early age, and why I fight the way I fight.
Outstanding. So eres de Westchester, huh?
Yes.
Westchester. So, Commissioner, real quick, we know you're an attorney, as you just mentioned, by profession, and what I want to do is personalize you to the audience. We share with you that offline, and often what happens is the voters hear what's going on in the news, and we've heard some negative things. So let's talk about that real quick, so we can get to why you're going to be a different candidate and why Democrats should vote for you during this primary election cycle that's coming up in August, right? So we know that there was some ethics issues with regard to filings and disclosures. Can you touch on that just to let the audience know what the real story is?
Absolutely. As a first-time candidate in 2018, I'm not a career politician. Somebody, this was the first time filing, and I thought that it was supposed to be a snapshot of that moment in time, and not recognizing that it was supposed to be the previous year's income, which is all disclosed. As a lobbyist, you have to disclose all of your compensation from your clients. So that was always public. And unfortunately, I misinterpreted the forms and put the wrong information. I thought it was a snapshot, but we voluntarily changed it when we realized that we had made a mistake. So again, trying to be transparent, trying to be above board, making sure that we were doing everything ethical. So we changed the forms ourselves. It was voluntary when we realized there was a mistake. And unfortunately, political opponents called me up to the Ethics Commission. And this is the first time ever, from my understanding, that the Ethics Commission would ever found probable cause when somebody voluntarily made the corrections to the forms. Bad on me, but it certainly was never an intent not to disclose information. Again, that information was always public. I filled the forms out wrong, and it's unfortunate that we are in this situation.
Was the ethics issue after you filed for governor, to run for governor?
Yes. So because when we were going through and filing my paperwork for governor and putting my filings together, we were going back with my CPAs and my tax attorney and all the consultants that are in my life now, and they realized when they're going through the old forms that we had done them wrong at the beginning. And so we would ensure, okay, we don't want that. We want to make sure that we're doing everything right, everything above board. And so that's when we put in the modified changes.
So part of moving forward was always owning up to your mistakes and correcting them, right?
Absolutely. And that's what you should want in an elected official. You should always want somebody to be honest and transparent, tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, because there's really hard times, and people are experiencing across our state and across our country. And if you can't rely on your elected officials to at least be honest with you, you can't make the right decisions for yourself at home. Your local officials can't make the right decisions. And that's, that's who I am. I think my mother told me when I was young, she's like, I can handle anything but lying. And so that's something that's always in my head, to make sure that I'm always telling the truth. And then I'm just, I'm a person. I'm not always right. And it's important for me to know that I can trust the people, to know that I'm trying to do what's right.
Sure. Commissioner, let me go to something that's really an issue. You mentioned how you came back to South Florida to work on the housing cases of predatory loans. I guess it was predatory loans, banking irregularities when it comes to properties, mortgages, I'm sure. So let's talk about this. We have a lot of economic hurt. Depending on who you ask, normally it's one party will say the state's economy is doing great. The other party will say we're not so good. If you listen to the United Way, if you look at the United Way report, the Alice report of 2020 addendum, you'll see that roughly in Dade County, 59% of the households are below, actually paycheck away from economic crisis. We know people are having a real hard time economically. We know COVID is an issue. We know inflation's pretty high. There's a whole bunch of issues that need to be addressed to help people alleviate their pain. What do you bring to the table? What is it that you'll do differently as governor? And give me a little contrast between you and the current governor.
Yeah, and that's exactly the fundamentals of what we bring to the table and what I bring to the table is when I listen. I listen, to the people on the ground. I don't live in an iron throne. I'm constantly talking to people, whether it's on the ground and communities, whether it is things that we've done inside of our own campaign called Nikki Fried, listening to what is happening and what is impacting the different parts of our state. I respond to a majority of my social media inquiries because I want to hear what is happening and not be all the way up in Tallahassee thinking that I know best. And so what I bring to the table is not only am I listening, but I'm also a problem solver. I like to come into a room and say, okay, what is the situation of today? How are we solving it? And how are we making life better? And you're so correct, Robert. I hear every single day from families all across our state when they're seeing, rent being increased by 50% and not able to afford rent. People that are in homes that, with property insurance increasing and property taxes increasing, can't afford their homes and certainly can't purchase new homes. I mean, look, I went to Palmetto. Where is my teacher living? She's not living in Pinecrest or he living in Pinecrest. That's impossible on that teacher's salary. And certainly I'm seeing that the lines increasing all across the state at our food banks, at people that are needing extra assistance. And we have a housing crisis once again in our state. And as somebody who has been, in the trenches of this issue, like I said, I was doing Habitat for Humanity, literally building affordable homes when I was in high school, to fighting for people during the foreclosure crisis. And now we are in an affordable housing crisis where people can't afford homes and people can't afford rent. And that's just not acceptable. Florida is the third largest GDP in the nation and larger than most countries around the world. And yet we have people that, and I think there was a New York Times, or maybe it's a Wall Street Journal, there was some article that came out this week that said basically people can't afford to live in Florida anymore. And so while we keep attracting more and more people into our state, what we're doing is we're squeezing down the middle and lower class. And so what I bring to the table is I want to solve that problem. I want to be creative. I want to work with our local governments. I want to work with trying to come up with, some rental assistance or a bill of rights for rentals, so that you can't be increasing your rent, a certain percentage per year, making sure that we're building more affordable housing in our areas. We know that unfortunately the Republican Party has gutted the trust fund that is supposed to be used every single year to build more affordable homes. I mean, look what happened in Hialeah last week. We had protests in Hialeah when there's a building that is raising rent by almost $1,000 extra a month. And so now the people are going to the streets and protesting. And it is incumbent upon us leaders, and especially as I want to be governor, is to be listening to the people and not pretending that it doesn't exist. And unfortunately, we have a leadership right now in Tallahassee that they're wanting to talk about almost everything else, but what is really impacting the people of our state every single day. And so know that I am a fighter. I am a problem solver. I want to bring people together and come up with common sense ways to get out of this housing crisis.
So, Commissioner, as you speak to the audience, right, the Democrats who will be voting in the August 23rd primary, and you're telling them to vote for you, I'm going to say that, give you a little commentary here. Most people in South Florida and probably across the state are underpaid and underemployed. Some people just can't find the jobs that they want. There's an opening of jobs, and yes, people have gone back to work and they're still looking for work. But honestly, it's an issue of, can people afford to take those jobs?
Yeah.
What can you do as the governor to help alleviate that problem? Workforce development, business opportunities. Let's talk about the things that Democrats are not known for speaking about, that you and I had talked about it years ago about what you wanted to do in Florida.
Yeah. A lot of it too is that we need to be bringing in more diversity of our economy. That right now, so much of our economy is providing for these low wage jobs, whether that's in the tourist industry, and even in agriculture. I mean, look, there's 2 million people that work in agriculture, and a good chunk of them are migrant workers and are people that are living here on, abysmal amount of money. And so I talk about ways that we are bringing in new industries into our state that has better paying jobs. And that's everything from bringing the film industry back into our state. That is, look, we have, the Space Coast. We should be having better, jobs when it comes to the space industry. And I think that most people know that I'm in support of legalization, which is going to bring better paying jobs into our state as well. So looking at the diversification of our jobs and also making sure that when we are bringing in new corporate companies into our state, that there are corporate responsibilities that come with it, making sure that they have housing for their employees, and absolutely workforce training is a necessity. We know that not everybody is equipped to go to the higher ed system, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay. I have a lot of family members that chose to not go to college and went and still did a lot of vocational work. And so we've got to be focusing our time on how to recruit good talent from our high schools, making sure that there's a pathway for better paying jobs, and encouraging, obviously, all of our industries to be raising the level of standards. And, look, $15 is not enough. It's not enough, especially during inflationary times, that workers are out there and there's no protections even for our Uber drivers and the people that are in this new industry. There's no protections for them. And yet we still see a rise in those who are trying to make a better way of life. And we just aren't focusing on that. And our policies are not geared towards those individuals who are trying to rise themselves up.
So we've just been given the less than 10-minute mark. And in this last few minutes, what I would like to tell you is, or like to hear from you is, we know that COVID has hit the state very hard, right? We know that there's really been, it's funny because what we see in Tallahassee is centralization of power by preempting local government, taking authority from government, yet state government wants to tell the locals what to do, right? Yep. And we know that there's been a mix of information or leaving it up to the locals to deal with the COVID response. So here's what's happened. Businesses were shut down, businesses opened up. There was no real plan to mitigate COVID. And now they're suffering because some businesses are having to close down because it's Omicron. I'm glad that we're almost on the tail end of it, but Omicron really hit them hard. What are you going to do different with COVID, the COVID response, and how would you treat any future pandemic differently and the economy?
And I think you bring up a really amazing point, Robert. It is, nobody knows what's next on COVID. No one knew when we first got hit in 2020 what it was going to look like, what the impact was. And that's a time when government should be coming together, bringing to people from all walks of life, Democrat, Republican, NPA, not even registered, bringing people together, listening to all sides, listening to creative ways to get through this, and talking to your local electeds. The local electeds, every county is different. Miami-Dade is absolutely different than what happens in Gadsden County and Polk County, and empowering our local electeds to do what they need to do for their own local community. This governor did just the opposite. It was his way or the highway. Didn't listen to any of our mayors, didn't even have any conversations with any of them. I mean, you hear from all of our mayors in South Florida that there was very little to no communication with the governor's office on making sure that they had all the information necessary, that there was transparency, that there was support, that there was testing, that there was vaccines, and just kind of working through what works in your county and in your cities. And so I come from a very different perspective. When I saw what happened, I actually had statewide calls with mayors and commissioners from all over the state. We all got onto the calls, and it was people that were on there that were from red areas and blue, because they didn't care. They just wanted information. They wanted to know that somebody in Tallahassee was thinking about their communities and wasn't putting their ego first. And so when I talk about COVID, that's how I lead. Transparency, calmness, not attacking anybody, not attacking the media, not attacking our local governments and our local businesses, and making sure that we're literally all in this together. And I think that's how we have to do, and be listening to the scientists, listen to the doctors. Look, the CDC continues to change, its position too, because we're getting more and more information every single day about this virus, what is working, what's not working. We know that the Regeneron doesn't work for Omicron. Okay, well, there's other things coming out, and we've got to be patient. We know what we need to be doing as individuals to protect ourselves and our families and our coworkers and our communities. But if we start to throw bombs at each other, people take a step back and don't want to talk about it and don't want to hear anything anymore. And that's counterproductive. So being honest, showing up, I think that's another thing. We saw that this governor did not show up for the people. He just hoped that it would kind of go away and that he would be able to come to the tail end, and it really wasn't too bad.
So given that you're going to show up, right, and you're going to lead with inclusion, I believe it's fair to say, look, we as constituents want a leader. We want a decisive leader, a strong leader, but we also want a compassionate leader. Are you that person?
Without a doubt. I've shown that my entire life. That's why I do what I do. This isn't about me. This is about showing the people of our state that there's a better way to lead, that you can make the right decisions for our state, supporting our economy. I was a small business owner myself. My dad was a business owner. Like, I've been taught to respect the business community, supporting entrepreneurship and supporting that. So there's a way to do that, but still the recognition that we lost 63,000 people in our state, and that people's jobs were lost, and people saw their family members, in the hospitals and were scared. And there has to be leadership that hears those voices too. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So this is who I am. I lead with my heart. I want to make people feel that they are coming to the state of Florida, that they're welcomed here, which is not what's happening with this, authoritarian behavior from our governor, dividing our state, creating hatred and divisiveness. I'm somebody who likes to bring people together. My dad is a diehard Republican. My mom is a diehard Democrat. I was brought up in a household to listen to both sides of an argument, come together, and make sure that we are doing this together.
Absolutely. So most people will say, when you really sit them down, they don't care Republican, Democrat. They just want the issues resolved, right? Nice
Freudian slip there. I'll take it.
Commissioner, law and order. Do you support law enforcement? Do you support the public institutions, education, the infrastructure that we, the taxpayers, pay for? And will you continue to not waste government, but waste money for government, but other than ensure accountable, effective government?
Of course. I always say, I was also taught, you got to balance your checkbook. We have personal responsibilities, and I oversee the agriculture law enforcement. So I've got 1,100 amazing men and women that work for me in law enforcement. Obviously, oversee the Florida Department of Law Enforcement as well. It falls underneath the entire cabinet. I think that the gentleman who was at my parents' wedding used to be the chief of police for Miami. So I was brought up with a lot of law enforcement around me. In our institutions, that's what makes our country amazing. And, the fact that we have a public education system where everybody has access to it. All of our institutions need to be supported. And that's what makes America great. And that's our democracy, and our patriotism is built around these institutions. And nobody wants to see them collapse. Everybody wants that government that's going to be there to protect them. The purpose of government is to be there for the people, not overstep. And definitely, I'm much more of almost a libertarian, in me, that we need to make sure that we're showing up for the people, but we're doing it responsibly. I'm definitely fiscally responsible is how I frame myself, and making sure that we are stewards of the money. And I say this all the time too. When somebody goes in to vote for me, they are giving me their proxy, and I take that responsibility.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have 1 minute left. One last question. To avoid you becoming a lame duck governor, or whoever the nominee is becoming a lame duck governor because of the three branches of government being controlled by the majority of another party, what can they do to get involved? The people who are viewing this, the people who want balanced government, what can they do to not only get involved, but also get involved with your campaign?
Sure. First of all, go to nikkifried.com to volunteer. We are building an army of support all across our state, because this isn't about me. This is about supporting our down ballot candidates, getting to every individual voter out there and talking to them. And so this is how you're going to get a balanced government, is making sure that you are listening to the people, that you're empowering the people. I spent too much time in 2018 hearing about the top of the ticket. It's got to be about the bottom of the ticket. It needs to be about the people that are on the ground supporting each other, that are going to be there in your local governments, your city and county commissioners, your House and senators. I'm going to be there, but you need to show up too, because we can't do this alone. We need everybody to be there, come to the polls, come volunteer, be an active part of democracy, because that is what's on the line in 2022.
Thank you, Commissioner. There you go again. On behalf of Miami's community newspaper, the production team, Andres and Wilson, we can't thank you enough. We'll see you next time, and hopefully you'll join us again in the near future to talk about the campaign trail and what's going on.
I would love to. Thanks for having me on today, Robert.
Pleasure.